Even in an epic setting like Theros, there are still those who rise above the rest, becoming woven into the storytelling fabric of future generations. These heroes, these monsters, these planeswalkers are the iconic standouts that help us forge our own Theros legends. Let's meet them.
Xenagos the Reveler is a satyr planeswalker from Theros. Before his spark ignited, he enjoyed the typical freewheeling life of a satyr in the Skola Valley. And then his spark ignited and he ventured out into the multiverse, thinking this was an opportunity to enjoy all the vast pleasures now available to him. But what he found was disillusionment. Compared to the infinite, he felt really small, and as an arrogant satyr, it is the last thing he wanted to feel. So he's got plans.
In the early designs that I did for Xenagos, he actually had sort of a goat head, and we thought that was a little too demonic, a little too inhuman, and we needed a character that you could identify with. So he went from sort of a goat-headed, goat-legged, sort of creature into an actual, more of a satyr kind of look, but with this very body paint revelry-looking kind of look to him.
So with Elspeth, Sun's Champion, the plus ability on her is just like, in many ways, her iconic ability, which is putting tokens into play, 1/1 tokens. This has been true of many of her other versions. In general, we've tried to key in on what is iconic for each of our planeswalkers and what is most essential and core to that planeswalker, and every time we repeat them, try to give them some of that flavor.
It's interesting to see these characters slowly go through worlds where they might change costuming and stuff like that, sort of adapt to the world a bit. It's also interesting to see them interpreted by different artists.
Her second ability is destroying big creatures. It's sort of appropriate, we feel, for a lot of the the imagery you've seen with her in terms of taking down a big Hydra or whatever. It's a reprisal type of effect that we've seen on white cards before.
We are re-envisioning Elspeth. She is going to find her courage. She's going to find her firm foundation. This is the place where it all matters for Elspeth, and I really think people are going to like who she becomes.
Ultimates, we in many cases want to make sure they end the game. If you've been making a bunch of 1/1s and you can't quite end the game, and it feels like you've taken control, but we just need a way to end the game, it's a very nice way to just, all your stuff's super awesome and incredible, and it's really going to be hard for your opponent to survive after that.
Unlike Xenagos, who's from the world of Theros, and Elspeth, who we've seen before, Ashiok is from a world we haven't seen. Ashiok's past is a mystery, and that kind of, in a way, plays into the character of Ashiok here. We know that this person's past is supposed to be shrouded in mystery, is their identity is supposed to be sort of trailing away into dreams and nightmares. And that, in a way, helps establish what we already wanted for the character, is for there to be this halo of unknowability, of uncategorizability. If we had chosen someone who had been from this plane, they wouldn't have quite the same sense of mystery about them.
A lot of human identification, like identifying with other humans, comes in the eyes. You read a lot from the eyes. Even if someone's smiling, their eyes may not be, that kind of thing. And a character which is completely lacking not only the eyes, but part of their skull, the whole top of their head, with just some smoke represented there that basically that's where you want to look, but there's nothing there to connect with, was meant, specifically planned by Jeremy just to be unnerving and uncomfortable and disorientating. And I think the effect comes across in the artwork.
Daxos of Miletus is one of my favorite characters. He befriends Elspeth. He kind of is her guide through the world. They become close. He makes her sort of reconsider her worldview and what she wants from life. So he is an oracle of Heliod, and he has an interesting perspective that Elspeth, really needs.
Daxos of Miletus is a card that has this, what we call a saboteur ability. When it hits your opponent, you get to do something cool, and he needed an evasive ability. So we went all the way back to the Legends set, to Amrau Kithkin, and that card can't be blocked by creatures that are bigger than it. So we gave that same ability to Daxos.
We're very excited to have a legendary Hydra. Polukranos is the most fearsome Hydra on Theros. This is a monster that has terrorized humanity on this world for a long time. Polukranos is one of the reasons you do not venture out from the polis. Hydras have become Green's rare iconic, which means the creature that we go to, that's the creature that we go to for Green to represent these rare and mythic rare creatures. It just sort of worked out well that we headed to this Greek myth-inspired world where Hydras had a perfect home. Maybe angels don't fit quite as well here, maybe demons are a little stranger, but Hydras were right in the wheelhouse for Theros.
So one card I will always remember from Theros development and in editing is Polukranos World Eater. So huge Hydra. Originally in design, it wanted to fight multiple creatures, but we never use fight to describe a kind of a group battle. Fighting is always one creature versus another, just because it gets kind of awkward if a 4/4 fights multiple creatures. What does that mean? No one really knows. It's ambiguous. So Polukranos also appears in the Heroes versus Monsters dual deck, which means it had to be worked on a little bit ahead of time. So we're trying to figure out Monstrosity. We're trying to figure out its other ability, which was really long. And finally, one of the problems that came up is we really wanted X. So the appearance of X in its Monstrosity ability was super important to development. You could pump this thing as much as you can. But then also the second ability, when it dealt damage, also wanted to refer to X. Now by rule, these two abilities don't talk to each other. The value of X has to be defined in each one. So this was a problem we kind of wrestled with for a while, especially from the rules point of view. And then it finally hit me. Well, I could just write a rule of the Monstrosity saying if the X is in one ability, then the other ability knows it. And it was that moment that I realized I'm kind of just making these things up. We can just write the rules the way we want them to work, and people will have fun, and people will get it. So that's how it happened.
Timur the Murder King is a former hero who died, escaped the underworld, and then went on to lead other returned from the underworld. He was never a nice man. He was a killer and great warrior throughout his entire life, and since he lost his identity when leaving the underworld, he sort of maintains that same rhythm of causing mass death everywhere he goes.
So Timur the Murder King, from my memories of development, was actually changed quite a bit very late. A lot of it was just to create a card that would just sort of be a pain in the butt to control decks, that you'd keep finding ways to keep bringing them back, find ways to keep throwing creatures that you had in play at your opponent, and sort of that there would always be this threat that you could keep bringing back to the board, sort of regardless of what your opponent might be trying to do.
So Enthusa is one of the legends in the set, and she's also a character in the novel. She is a fierce Setessan warrior who has allegiance to Nylea, and she is going to be crucial as things kind of start going wrong in the world. You'll have to wait and see.
And Thusa illustrates one of the examples that we were trying to go for with Heroic, is to make each and every instance of targeting the creature matter. Where possible, we wanted to incentivize and create turns where you're going to target her, and I targeted her, now I have 3 lands that are active, and I targeted her again, there's another 3 lands, and for example, in some of the early designs, she turned on all of the lands but was weaker in other ways, but this was just one of the many examples where we wanted to reward you each time you did the Heroic trigger.
Metamai the Ageless is a character in the book, and it's hard to impress him. He really, you could tell him all the secrets of the world and he'd be like, I don't care. So he's kind of crabby and inscrutable, but he's a pretty fun character.
We have this bulletin board where we post all the mythic rares, and people put post-it notes on them and discuss them and try to make sure that the mythics are as cool as they can be. And Metamai was a mess. He had so many words on him, and it was almost impossible to understand what he was supposed to do. And we finally managed to figure out a concise, easily understandable English language way to describe what we wanted him to do, and that was very satisfying to not have to print this ridiculous card with tiny type on it.
So Akros is the Sparta analog of what would be in the real world. Anaxis and Cymede are the king and queen of Sparta. And so sometimes we do show two characters on one card teaming up. Tibor and Lumia is another example. And so we wanted to get these legendary characters that are iconic into the set somehow, and this is a great example of that.
We wanted to do a neat, rare, heroic card, and the idea was that it was some kind of leader of some kind, and that you would charge this, and then it buffed all your whole team. And so the thing about it was, we didn't know exactly what it was going to be, and so what created it was pretty cool is they said, oh, well, we want to show the leader of the city of Akros, and here's a neat idea, we're going to show a married couple of warriors, which is completely new, it's not borrowed from Greek mythology, it's just their spin on it, and they sort of attached it, and it's really neat how sometimes we made this very flavorful card, but when design set it up, we didn't know where it was going, and that creative was able to then take it and do something very cool with it.
Hythonia the Cruel got legendary in part because her art was so awesome. Chris Ron's piece of this Gorgon sitting on her throne made for past petrified victims was just too cool, and we thought this has to be a particular person.
So in the beginning, when we made the set in design, we had two main Gorgons. One we called Baby Gorgon, and one we called Mama Gorgon. And so both of them are still in the set. They changed a little bit. So the biggest change on Mommy Gorgon is that originally we were cute, where it had death touch, and then when you monstrosity, it did damage to everything. But ooh, we're clever. It's got death touch. And then development said, guys, you're being a little too clever. It just kills everything. But one of the things they included that we did, which is, by the way, is not actually technical Greek mythology, it's our version, is we decided that we didn't want Gorgons hurting Gorgons. No Gorgon on Gorgon violence is what I say. And so in our world, the Gorgons are able to they don't turn themselves to stone. Because I wanted love. I wanted love for the Gorgons. I wanted the Gorgons to get together and not go, she's pretty, and then can't move. So in our world, which is not true by the way in the actual Greek mythology, they could affect each other. But in our world, we made a better world in which the Gorgons know love.
Whether you want to be the adventuring hero, taming mythical monsters, fighting alongside planeswalkers new and familiar, or even setting yourself up against the gods themselves, Theros is the place to do it. Join us again next time on Inside R&D for Born of the Gods. But until we meet again, I'm your host Rich Hagon saying bye.